says we're live. I'm going to start the countdown. All right, we're going to come on in. Let me get rid of that. Hey guys, welcome back to the live stream. We have got an awesome scheduled plan today. We are going to go through all the different tools. Most of the tools that I'm going to go through are going to be very specialized for solar. Some of them are going to be preferences, and some of them are going to be just good tools that I like and I dislike. There's going to be some cheap ones. There's going to be some expensive ones. Just keep in mind that most of the time there's cheap options to practically everything. So don't sweat over getting cheap tools unless they're one of the few that I warn you about. There's a few that you don't want to take things. Let's take care of a little bit of business for the week. One of the things I want to do is I want to celebrate again another banner week. We are at 4,400 subscribers. That is well over any expectations that I had, and thank you so much to every one of you. It means so much to me, and I just cannot get over the fact that we continue to grow at this accelerated rate, and everything is going just fantastic, and I really, really do appreciate it. I haven't checked yet to see who's online. We've got a couple people online already. So welcome to those of you that are here and those of you that are joining. Hello, Suf. Hi, mate. Good to see you. I won't be watching this directly tonight, but I do have some folks that are monitoring for me, and they'll wave and they'll kick, and they'll tell me I need to go pay attention to the chat. So please feel free, open conversations here. I love the questions. I love that part of it. I do want to handle one item that is really important to me. In the solar shed, I promoted that it is 12 panels that I purchased for $15 each for 180 bucks. I created a video back about a week ago that walks you through the different steps that you need to take to locate these panels and get some. I heard an enormous amount of feedback that I got lucky and that it could never happen again, and that it simply was just a fluke on my part. And I want to tell you guys, I've got some news for you this week. I decided that based on that feedback, I was going to go through this long process again, and I was going to seek out more panels just to prove that the method works. And what I did is I sat down exactly as that video outlines, and if you're not familiar with that video, make sure you go and view it. If in the replay, I'll try to link this to it. But basically, I purchased 29 250 watt with microinverters for 200 bucks this week. I have an entire storage unit. I always said that I regret it not buying more when I did it the first time. I wish I had a warehouse where I could have stuffed a whole bunch of them in, hundreds of them, but I didn't. So I wanted to prove to you that this isn't a fluke process, that I didn't just get lucky. I didn't just skip on something and fall over and find some lucky place that showed down. The process works. So make sure if you're looking for some used panels, now they're not top of the line. They're not generating perfect power for everything, but they do work. And with them working, they're allowing me to build all kinds of cool stuff and do it. So I just wanted to cover that and make sure that everyone knew. And then we're going to get into some tools here today. So hopefully you guys are interested in all the different tools that I use that we can put together solar systems. I'm going to start with my top 5 tools that are not 100% exclusive to solar, but absolute necessities. There are a bunch of tools. You can spend thousands and thousands on tools, and a large portion of them you probably don't need. I've got a few of those that I'm going to walk you through today. There's a couple of them that are really cool, and you'll want them, but that doesn't mean you absolutely have to have them. So today we're going to start off with the top 5 tools, and we're going to walk through the first one and make sure that all of our cameras are set up. I'm going to start off with something that's pretty obvious that most of you are going to know and recognize. These are multimeters. And there is nothing in solar that you can get away with without owning at least one of these. Now, you can see that clearly these items are, I'm going to turn one of these on so you can see it with the light on here. They show, and you saw this in last week's video also, but these allow you to measure voltage. If you get one like this, it allows you to measure the amperage flowing through wires. And I think I brought a piece of demonstration wire to show that. I can't show the actual voltage or amperage, but I can show you how it's connected. So in most systems, you will have something along the lines like this, where you'll have a positive and a negative wire. Now, what you're going to want to do is place the amp meter, and you're going to want to, you can turn this to amps. And if it's under, in this particular meter, now you have to pay very close attention when you're buying one of these. They have lots of different functionality, and the basic functionality that you need, you can get for $10 or $12. You need to be able to look at voltage, and because voltage is important in every aspect of setting up the system. But you're going to want to make sure that it does everything that you want. So for example, this one will do voltage, this one will also do voltage, but this has a amperage meter. So where I can clamp this around one of the, either the ingoing or the positive or the negative wire, and this will read out how much voltage is going through the wire. And I'm going to turn this a little bit where you can see it a little bit better. So it'll show the voltage that's going through the wire so that you can get an idea of how much this wire is supporting and it's controlling. This one does not have that feature. So as you can see, I owned this one when I got into solar, and then when I realized I needed this amperage reading, I bought this one. Now, there is a third model that has what they call an inrush. And that allows you, when a refrigerator, let's say, for example, turns on, that motor kicks in and it has a big inrush of power. It allows you to measure that power. Neither one of these do this. So you need to make sure that the meter that you get matches the needs for what you're doing. This is an absolute necessity. This is a nice to have because you're going to want to see how much power you're supporting through different wires. It helps you debug things. It helps you find problems. It helps identify what's going on. The inrush one is a really cool feature, but not absolutely necessary. I've made it all this time without one. Are there times where I said, I wish I had one? Sure. I'm addicted to the toys. I'm addicted to all parts of building the system and maintaining it and everything. But this is number one. You cannot get along without this device. You're going to have it, and there is no substitute. But the nice thing is, the cheap ones start at about $10. The expensive ones start at $300, $400, $500. Now, the expensive ones are probably going to be more accurate. They're probably going to give you more precise readings, and they're going to have more functionality. Do you need the $500 one to hook up a solar system? No. Is it cool? Yeah. All right. So let's move on to number two. Now, you're going to have to give me a second here to switch equipment each time I do it. Piece of equipment number two that you cannot live without if you're building a solar system is going to be an MC4 crimper. Now, I don't think, unfortunately, I threw a whole bunch of tools in my bag and I don't see a empty clamp here. But basically, I do have a put together one. So what you're basically doing is you're building these connectors. So on the one side, plugs directly into the other. And you can see here that once they do that, they support good connection. Now, what you don't want to do is take shortcuts on this. DC voltage is extremely dangerous when it's not handled correctly. And a lot of people don't look back at their history and realize that when the two different types of current were created, there was kind of a beta VHS war going on. And you'll see it in some movies where, you know, one guy's saying, well, your electricity is dangerous and blah, blah, blah. But basically what it was is that AC's current is flowing back and forth, off and on. And let's say that it's, you know, 50 megahertz like it is here. And that means it's switching back and forth very quick, 60 times a second or 50 times a second, depending on what part of the world you're in. And that allows the electricity to grab and push and grab and push. And when you get shocked, you bounce back. If you've ever been shocked by high voltage, a wall outlet of some kind, or a little tingle from a stove device or a coffee pot or something, it's like a little tingle and it pulls you back. The problem is that kind of voltage with DC grabs you and it pulls you in and it becomes very, very dangerous. Now, I also want to do a little disclaimer at this point, and unfortunately I've got to do this. I am not an electrician. I do not suggest that if you are not comfortable with any of the things that I'm telling you how I did, I am suggesting how I do it. I am not suggesting that this is the proper, the right, or the correct way to do it. So if you're looking for the proper, the correct, or the right way to do it, you might want to go and look for an electrician to help you to make sure. But how I did it is you take a tool, you strip the wiring off of this, and you clamp down with this device onto that wire, and then put this fitting over top. And these two connect, and this device creates both of them. Now, one thing that's important about MC4 connection, this is a bonus content. With the bonus content, you want to make sure that your MC4 connectors are the same brand. There is a lot of history of these shorting out, burning out, catching on fire, and frying because they don't work with each different brand. So make sure when you buy them, what I do is I'll buy them in 50 packs so that everything I connect up is the same. Now, if you've got solar panels that you bought, used ones especially, then you need to either make sure that the ends on the wire that connects to the solar panel is the same type as the solar panel, or you need to replace the solar panel's connector. And if it's a used solar panel, then it's a good chance that that's not a bad idea anyway, and to go ahead and just replace the connector, because these are a weak spot in your system. And later on, I'll go over a piece of equipment that can help you identify when you're having problems with these and you may not even recognize it. All right, so that is number 2, and one that you cannot live without unless you purchase all pre-made products. And even if you do that, you're still going to want to replace one here and there. And so this is something that you really need to do. Now, this comes in a kit. I don't know if I brought the bag with me. Mine hasn't stayed in the bag. But this kit basically was a nice little leather case. Oh, here it is. I did throw it up here. I thought I had. This little leather kit has that in it. It has, you know, a bunch of different connectors in it. It all comes all nice stocked up and everything, and all zipped, and allows you to carry it around. And if you're doing a small system and 10 or 12 connectors, you could buy the whole kit. And I think this kit was like $30. So, and it comes with another, you know, 10 or 12 pairs of these. And that is probably the easiest way to get one of these, is to buy one of these kits, and that way you have all the kits you want. Now, the only downside is keep in mind, these are matched sets. And you need to make sure that whatever ones you use in here are the ones that plug into each other, and whatever new ones you buy are either the same brand or you replace both sides of the cable. Okay, I think that's enough about MC4 connectors and their tools. All right, let's look at the next item on the list that you really cannot get along without. Now, some people will tell you you can, and I've got a couple of these. And I am going to start with this one down here. If you're going to build anything with solar, there was a poll this week. And on this poll, I asked, there were 4 different parts of the solar system, and I asked which part is the most common part to fail. And I think I said the inverter, the battery, something else, and wiring was the 4th option. And surprisingly, even after last week where I mentioned the most vulnerable spot of the system is your wiring and your connections, it is always the highest point of failure. And the reason being is that you have a quality controlled manufactured inverter, a quality controlled manufactured and tested charge controller. You have a quality controlled and manufactured battery. You have a bunch of wires that are pieced together by adapters, connectors, and plugs, and they're moved, and they're switched, and they're plugged in, and they're unplugged, and it is going to be where your failures come. There is no better example than in last week's live stream. I showed you a bad connection in one of my charge controllers and how it burned the charge controller up. So this will help with that. A torque wrench, and in my case I have 2. I have one for the very small torquing. It's a digital torque wrench. And you basically set this to, this one goes between, I want to say it's 1 and 12 or 1 and 18, maybe a bit more than that, inch-pounds. Now, do not get this confused with what you would see in a car where it's foot-pounds. And foot-pounds and inch-pounds are 1 and 12, just like they would be in real life. So if you read a spec that says tighten this to 12 inch-pounds, and you attempt to tighten it to 12 foot-pounds, you are going to strip the screw out and break your device. So this basically allows you to go in here and configure it, and when you tighten it down. Let's see if I can turn this on. All right, there we go. And it's set to 4 inch-pounds. So when I would tighten this down, I can't go 4 inch-pounds. Let me turn it down a little bit. See how low it'll go. Oh, it'll go pretty low. Here's a 0.6 of an inch-pound. 6.66. And when I tighten this down, you can see it starts creeping green. And hopefully you saw that on the screen. If you didn't, I'll do it again. At least I'm going to try to do it again. Wow, I need my other hand. That hand's not strong enough. And you saw that red come on, meaning that I over-tightened it. And you saw the green come on. So, and you probably didn't hear the audible beep, but this tells you that you got it to the correct torque. Now, mine was set for 4 inch-pounds. And the reason being is I used this specific tool to build my DIY battery last, and it had a 10mm nuts on there. And so I tightened each one of them. And then when I was done, I went back and tightened them again. And then when I was done with that, a week later, I went back and checked them all again. And the reason being is who wants a 305 amp hour battery that's powering your entire home with 16 battery connections, being 32 wires connected that should be torqued to a certain spec and it not be torqued to that spec correctly. So that is why this is so important. It is the most vulnerable piece. Now, when you get into hooking up bigger things, you may find that you need to go over the specs that this provides. And I think, like I said, I'm pretty sure the specs on this one, it's a calibration sheet, is about 20 foot-pounds or something like that, or 20 inch-pounds. Now, a lot of the times when you're tightening up batteries or terminals to an inverter or something like that, this one also works with screwdrivers for tightening things on your, as you can see, it's got a kit for all the screws so that you can tighten down all the terminals like on Victron devices and all that kind of stuff. This one, the second one I've got, which I have to thank my wife for, she bought this one for me back a ways. And this one is a little bit higher torque rating. And I use this for tightening things like battery connections, the main battery connections. And it does between 1 and 115 inch-pounds. Now that means between 1 and practically 112 would be 10 foot-pounds. So it does between 1 and 10 foot-pounds. And you just basically set this connector here, or this dialing up device, up and down to how many inch-pounds you need. So let's say you need it, we're going to go up to, let's say, oh, it only goes to 21. That's 21 foot-pounds. Yeah, that's not right. There's another measurement. There it is, inch-pounds. So you set this to, let's say, 30 inch-pounds, and you could tighten down a battery cable or something. And I think like on the EG4 batteries terminals, those need to be tightened to the DC battery terminals need to be tightened to between 100 and, I think it's 105 and 112, or maybe it's 120, somewhere right in that area. But this is where you would use that. You would put the connector on for whatever socket size you happen to be used, whether it's that size or the bigger one or the smaller one here. And you could just tighten it down to whatever you needed to do. And then this goes into just a regular socket driver, and you can just turn it. Obviously, it's not like the screwdriver one where you can turn it with your hand. So this maybe you don't need both of these absolutely positively. There are a lot of people that I know in the solar industry that determine that they're going to tighten it up close enough by gut feel and and do it that way. I worry about that. These two kits together were less than 60 bucks. Actually, I don't think that's right. I think this one was probably 50 bucks and this one was probably 30 bucks. So 80 or $90. But considering this is the most dangerous and vulnerable part of your solar system, I figure it's probably a very good investment. And I wouldn't do anything else but that. So I'm going to leave that here for you to see while I transfer over and find the next tool in the list. All right, so the next tool in the list is going to be a set of drill bits. Now, I particularly would love to own a set of nice drill bits, and what ends up happening inevitably is I spend a whole bunch of money on a nice set of drill bits and I break them. So I have started taking to the kits that are sold over at Harbor Freight, the titanium drill bits. They both work good with wood. They work with metal. They're pretty much all around plastic, wood, metal, pretty much all around type thing. They hold up pretty good. They can maintain a good sharpness. And the entire kit ends up costing me, I think you can get these on sale for, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks. Not that much. At most, I think they're $20 on a regular price. But you're going to need drill bits for practically every thing you work on. Whether you're mounting items, whether you're doing this or doing that, you're going to need drill bits. This is one of those must-haves also. But it's a pretty simple one, and most people already own this. All right, so we're going to move on to, I had the first 5 outlined. This one you cannot live without, and I've got a lot of preferences on this. These are wire strippers, wire cutters. Now I've got 2 different sizes here and a cap for something. I'm sure I was looking for it at the time. But these basically allow you to cut wire. I'm looking for that wire I had. Here it is. It allows you to cut wire pretty easily. As you can see, that's a 6-aught wire, and it just snipped it right off. Both sizes, the small one and the large one. This one takes a little bit more effort. But these devices, these are the Milwaukee ones. I used to buy the old wire cutters and strippers like these here. And these wire cutters are okay. And you still need these for some things. So it's not that you don't need these, but these are, you know, $4.99 or so. These are $18 to $25. But they also provide you with strippers. They're easy to get things on and off. And basically, they allow you to strip items. They've got set sizes here for both stranded and not stranded. And depending on the size of your hand, you might prefer one or the other. I cut 1/0 wire with these when I was building my system. And they really do a good job. I haven't had any problems with them. And everything is really well designed and thought out. It's even got little pieces here for if you're just a normal electrician, you can twist your wires on for, allows you to, normal 110 wire you can put in there and clip it off and snip it to the right, exactly the right distance so that it fits in wall plugs and stuff really well. I don't use that stuff, that part of it much, but I like the strippers on this. I like the wire cutters that are on this. And I also like the fact that this one has almost a set of needle nose, and this one has the almost pliers-like at the end. So they're really multi-purpose and they're very useful. But the fact is, you are not going to get away without having a good pair of wire strippers, a good pair of wire cutters, and build a system and take care of it. Now, wires being the most important part, I am going to show you the next item on my list, and it is I got a bunch of good tools to go through today. Forgot how many there were. Screwdrivers. Now, when you're working with electrical, you're used to the common, you're used to the Phillips, but what you're probably not used to are these here. These are square heads, and they literally are square. These are important when you're connecting up anything that's 120. If you're going to breaker boxes, if you're going to anything like that, that they do have either a Phillip or a common or a straight head device on those fuses and breakers and stuff like that. But most of them are made for these square ones. And these allow you to get them nice and tight, or the kit that you can buy like this that will have those type of bits in them also, that you can fit into the torque wrench so that you can tighten them down to exactly the right torque. So screwdrivers are extremely important, and you're going to want to look at the screwdrivers that you've got and make sure that you have good quality ones that are the right size. And what I mean by that, if you're working with Victron devices, you're going to notice that they've got some very small heads. And if you look at the difference between these, you are never going to get your screwdriver, this screwdriver in, or practically any other screwdriver, into the Victron device to tighten it or loosen up the screws that are in there to tighten things down. And so you're going to have some little ones like this. And I'm not sure exactly what size these are. Maybe this says 1/8 inch X3 slotted. So these fit really well into the Victron device, and they work really well. Now I keep losing them, so I buy multiple and then they kind of show up. But screwdrivers are really super important, and they're things that you're probably going to absolutely need. Some devices you can get away with that are nice. These are what they call lineman pliers. They are electrical pliers, wire cutters, and they're built very sturdy. They're very hefty, but they're also some things that you do with these, when you're bending wires or you're moving wires around, that you just can't do efficiently with normal wire cutters. So for example, when I hooked up the food trailer, I put in a breaker box in there and then ran all the electrical wire for the wall plugs and everything so that that solar system could power all of the different electrical devices in there. And these were, combine these with the wire cutters that we went over earlier, and these were just irreplaceable because they're just the right size to twist wires, to cut wires. They're strong enough and they're built sturdy where you don't have to worry about the quality of them. And these are actually inexpensive Huskies. Like I said, you don't have to go with the top of the line tools to get by on some of these. This is a relatively inexpensive brand, and they're very, very good devices, and they work really well. I noticed the snips got some attention, and they're not yours, they're mine. All right, moving on. we are going to move into some of the more obscure devices for electrical real quick. And we're going to talk about some of the detection devices that are out on the market. This particular one probably came with my meter. It's a Klein tool. They're sold at a bunch of different mass market places. So basically, you turn this tool on and you can detect the presence of electricity. Now, this one doesn't do it, but most of them have an AC or a DC connector or detection on them. This one only does AC, but it allows you to put it up against a live wire. For example, if this, where did that wire go? If you had the electrical wire and you touched it to it, it would go dee 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 dee, and it'll beep and tell you that there's power there. Now, the only problem with that is, and everyone who's used one of these will tell you they're kind of like doctor's test. When they work, it's enormously relief to know, hey, that's a live wire. But you never trust them when they don't say there's power. Because the one time you do is the one time that it's not going to sniff it out, and you're going to feel the pain, and it's going to hurt. So what I normally do is I test it with this, and just to make sure that it's a secondary thing. Using a meter is something you really should get used to and not trust it totally. But it is good to make sure, you know, I'll take it and wave it through fuse boxes, fuse panels after I've already confirmed everything's off, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Especially in the all-in-one devices, they are notorious for having bleed over power, whether that be the DC on the AC side or the AC on the DC side or whatnot. And so it's really nice if you have one of these, when you think everything's shut down, and you think the batteries are off, and you think the grid is off, and you think the turbines are off, and everything else that you may have hooked up, to flip this on and just run it through all the connections and make sure that you don't have any live power there. It's really used as a secondary device, but it does give you a bit of comfort, and I can't even tell you the number of times that I've used it for detecting if I've got the right circuit breaker or something like that. You know, put it in a wall plug and it beeps. You flip the breakers off until the thing stops beeping. So it's great help for things like that. Okay. The second one is this plug here. Now, this plug here has, and I don't know if you can see this, but it has a chart here that tells you if you have open grounds, open neutrals, open hot, open this, open that, so on and so forth. But it basically, what you're doing is when you plug this into a wall plug, you are looking for this to report that you have everything hooked up the way it should be hooked up. And that includes the positive and the negative, and they're not backwards. It includes that the ground wire is connected and actually functioning. It includes that all of that is functioning the correct thing. It's a relatively inexpensive device, and I believe this came in a kit with the meter and the detection device that you just saw, and this one together that I probably bought. I own 2 or 3 of these because these are really important when you're hooking up a lot of solar stuff. The last thing you want to do is plug something in like a computer and find out that your wall plug is wired backwards or something along those lines and ruin it. That would just be terribly painful and hurt quite a bit. So that is a very important electrical thing. Let's talk about other connections and some of the tools that I use to make them better. So we're going to start with ferrules. Now, ferrules, I think if I still have that wire, I do. I'm going to show you what a ferrule basically does is it turns a stranded wire into a solid wire so that you can get a good clamp. Now, there's some argument back and forth on whether ferrules are ideal or whether they're not ideal. Most people agree that they are a good idea, And the reason being is that when you crush down a bolt or something on top of this, and those wires spread out, a lot of the times what will happen is those little strands will flake off to the side and they won't make a good connection. Now, it does make a good connection to the ones that it crushes in its braces, but those 30% or 40% that's sticking off to the sides that didn't get crushed reduces the availability for this wire to transmit its full voltage. So the easiest solution for this, as you can see, this is a new pack I got here. You can buy these on Alibaba for about 15 cents. Actually, I think they're about 99 cents. And I usually, if I'm buying something on Alibaba and I need like a $1 gap or something, I'll throw something like this in. So you can put that over top of that cable. That actually might be a little bit too big. Let's see if we got one here. Yep, this one fits. So you put this on there, and as you can see, that fits nice and tight. And if it's a small one like one of these, you use one of these handheld devices that I bought in a kit. That is just like the ones that I bought for the MC4 connectors. This allows you to crimp those down and make sure that they're on good and tight. And I don't think I can do this one. Oh yeah, I can. And now you can see that this is nice and crimped into a solid wire that when I clamp that down, when that screw tightens down on the top of this, I'm going to have 100% of that wire's capacity because 100% of that wire is bound there together to be clamped on. Now, with these bigger ones, even if you don't have a crimper, you just slide this on the wire and tighten it down, it'll smush into low place. Now, they do sell these with about 3 or 4 shapes. I know they sell square ones. I know they sell flat, ovaled ones. They sell round ones. And all of them have a purpose for particular devices and different things. For example, Victron devices, most of the time are perfectly square like this here. And these little ones clamp on exactly the same. You would stick this on a piece of wire, and then you would take this device, insert it there, and just clamp it closed. And this would be a nice little square on top of that wire, and then it would have a nice little cap on there, and this would slide in. And for those of you who watched last week when we were building the 12-volt solar system, you'll notice that I had these, either these red or these yellow. I don't remember which one ended up fitting. And I clamped those wires that went into the charge controller so that it would be a single strand and it would connect properly. Because that I used stranded wire also. Now, if it's a solid wire, it's a completely different game. If you're putting together a home system and you're using stranded wire, this is a single strand already. If it's like a 110 outlet and you got single strand, you don't need the ferrules. But these are really super important if you're doing lots of solar systems and you want to make sure that your connections are good and strong and safe. These are the ones that you're going to want. And these little kits, and I'll have links to most of these tools and most of these things in the, it'll be in the description probably tomorrow because it's going to take me that long to build the list and to find the links to them all. But I think you can get this little kit here was probably $20 at most. I don't think it was much more than that. And I've used it thousands of times. I've gone through boxes and boxes of these things. You can buy these everywhere. Harbor Freight, Home Depot, Lowe's, Alibaba, wherever you want. Most of them are standard sizes. And then once you got the clampers here, you probably could get a kit. I think I bought these with a kit with that. It probably came in a package that looked a lot like, like that there. So these are really important. So this is something that you'll want to also have. All right. Moving on to another crimping tool, but for a different purpose. Now this one is to crimp wire caps, and you'll see that I keep boxes of little parts and pieces like this. Now, the reason I do this is when you're using something like this, you'll notice this is color-coded, red, blue, yellow. So if I pull out a yellow connector, or a blue connector, or a red connector, it allows me, and it comes in several different kinds, blue and red, yellow, and you can see there's all kinds of connectors. These are just butt ends to put two wires together, and yellow, blue, tons and tons and tons of little connectors. But this allows you to take those pieces, and I need to make sure I stay on camera here. I'm going to slide this box over where I don't get out of view. But it allows you to take the right color and insert it in here and clamp down on that wire and have that wire pinched perfectly within this. Now, in the past, these have been a huge problematic until I purchased this tool here. This tool here, I think I bought it off of Amazon. I'll include a link to it. I didn't even realize these were color-coded. And I didn't realize they were color-coded for the tool that allows you to do it. And it tells you the gauges of the wire that you need here. So if it's 18 to 22 gauge, you need a red connector. If it's 14 to 16 gauge, you need a blue connector. If it's 10 to 12 gauge, you need a yellow connector. And that allows you to pick the right connector, the right end, for the right connection. So for example, if I put the blue cap here and another blue one on the other side, they should connect. And here we go. So I would put this on one end and that on one end, and then these will plug in together, allowing me to create nice solid connections. But this tool here would be the one that would crimp it onto the wire. It feels like when you first start that this is an art. And to a certain extent it is, because you need to get the wire stripped at exactly the right distance. You need to get the insulation to go up into these little caps exactly the right way. And you need to make sure that you understand what you're actually crimping and what you're not crimping. So you're not clipping the whole thing, you're clipping a little piece of metal right here in the middle, which that's the part that needs to be stripped. These connect two pieces of wire where you stick one in one side and one in the other, and you clip them together to make a good connection. And heat shrink already wrapped, built onto here. So once you get it clipped, then you can take another tool, which I'm going to show you now, since this leads perfectly into it. So once you get them clipped on, what you probably are going to want to do is you're going to want to make things look nice. And there are tons of ways to do that, but the easiest way is using what we call a heat gun. Now, if you've watched any number of solar videos, about 90% of the people who run tests out on the internet of a battery will hook up an inverter, they will plug in 1, 2, or 3 of these heat guns, and they will turn them on. And the reason they do that is each one of these heat guns can pull 1,200 to 1,500 watts. And that allows them to suck a lot of juice out of that battery very quickly. They do nothing but spit out a ton of heat. But they allow you to take stuff like this, and you can put this on a piece of wire. And I'm going to see if I can get this to fit over this black wire. Nope. It's the wrong size stuff for this size wire. But you can put this over, and you could build the connector on. Let me see if I got a pair of scissors here. I definitely got a pair of snips that I could use. Let's see, where did I put them? I lost them again. All right. Let's just cut it with a knife. Okay. So you basically just cut this stuff, and then you slip it up over the end like this. There we go. Sometimes it's a little snug. Usually there's a little bit more room. This is kind of big wire. Then you will put one of your connectors on it. And let's say that you put in, you know, a connector like this that doesn't have the heat shrink built on. And you clamp that down, and then you would push this back insulation back over it. And after you've done that, you could take this heat gun and you would heat this up, and that would shrink down around it and make that connection look very professional looking. But not only that, it would ensure that if you looked at it in the future, you could see that there's something wrong with it. You would know from the way this insulation is on there and how it's attached properly, you would see that it doesn't look right, and it would look very nice and everything. So a heat gun is one of those items that is not absolutely necessary. If you want to build a solar system that looks really nice, I use this tool nonstop. This is definitely not one of the devices that you buy and don't use. If you buy this one, you will use this one. You will buy yourself a lot of different packages of colors so that you know, if you want yellow for your connection to your charge controllers, if you want blue for this particular device, and you clamp it on and you'd slide this back over top of it. If you want black for your positive and red for your negative, if you want to distinguish between them, you can put stripes on them. That brings me to an interesting tool in the toolbox. It's a simple one, and it seems like it's common sense, but there is some misconceptions about it that I want to go over it also. I'm going to get rid of a little of this before I get into it. Take this off of the picture, put these back in my box, take this and this out. All right. So electrical tape comes in multiple colors. Now, a lot of people think, I'm going to twist two wires together and I am going to put some electrical tape around it. And really what you're going to do is you're not going to use the industry standard and electrically approved caps because you want to burn down your house. Electrical tape is not designed to hold connections together or protect them from bad wiring. You should be using caps to connect wires together, or at the absolute least, I'm not fond of these, but there are a lot of people that use the Wago ones, and you can just stick the wires in here and they connect together without the twisting of the wires and the connectors this way. I personally prefer the caps, but these sometimes are extremely efficient and helpful. But electrical tape allows you to identify things, and in a lot of times you won't be able to find the right wire. And let's say that you go to the electrical store and you need a set of wire, and they tell you that all they have is black. Now, it's not uncommon. It happens quite frequently, and when it does happen, you're going to find out that you can't pass any code without identifying these wires. And so the industry standard way to solve this is to turn this into a negative wire or a positive wire by what they call taping the ends that you're going to be connecting it to. And now when you connect this, you can clearly see that this is a positive wire. And if this was red and you needed to wrap it with black tape, you could also do that. But in a three-phase system, you have multiple hot wires. You have a white that's hot, you have a red that's hot, and you'll also have a third phase, which is blue. So you could have multiple types, not multiple on the same wire like I did here, but at least this gives you a way to identify things. You can use it to connect, to hold things together. Like if you've got two wires running together and you wanted to tie them together, yes, great. Do not use them for connections. Electrical tape is not to make electrical connections. It's used in electrical devices to hold things together, to identify them appropriately, and to make sure that they are correctly identified later. After you run a 400-foot or 100-foot wire down a wall and through a thing, and it pops out the other end, how do you know which one's the live wire and which one's the neutral wire, which one's the this and that? And that's what electrical tape is used for. You will see this in most breaker box panels where there's either one that's wrapped with green, one that's wrapped white or black or red or whatever may be the case. All right, moving on. And you'll see a lot of the tools that we have here are based around electrical connections and wires because that's the weakest spot in your system. Now, this is one of those tool kits that has nothing to do with the electrical piece of it. It has to do with the physical connection piece of it. I keep this toolbox well stocked, full of nuts and bolts, not screws. Some of these are 3-inch screws. Some of these are deck screws for outside. Some of these are hex tops. Some of these are hex tops with their self-drilling. Some of these have flat heads. Some of these are short. Some of these have very narrow, small heads. Some of these have inset heads. Some of these have oval top heads. Some of these have special bits that are needed to put them in. Some of these have no heads whatsoever. This kit I keep around because inevitably all of these screws in here I use on a regular basis, surprisingly. And it just makes it easier to have them all in one place. So my suggestion is as you start needing screws and those type of things, just buy yourself a small kit like this and start placing the extras in here. And you'll find that it'll save you a fortune in the future as you start to get there. Now, this is one of those items that is the essence of putting things together at conventions, but also it is a necessity in an electrical system. Zip ties are a much better option to bundle things up, to hold them and to keep things clean. I particularly like these type of zip ties, and I want to get something I can place this on so you can see it. I'm going to grab this box here and set it on this because it's a white. Now they sell these in white and in black, but this allows you to take one of the screws out of your little handy dandy screw kit box, like this little wide head Phillips screw, wood screw, and put a screw through here into a wall or something, for example like this. And once that's attached, then you can zip tie whatever you want to this, and these can run down wires down the wall and keep them nice and clean and tidy where they don't move and on you. These are extremely helpful. If they're loose wires and you just have them out in the open, this allows you to bundle them together and connect them. But this has a built-on screw hole, and I hope you can see that. Oh yeah, you can see that just fine. So you can see that little screw hole there, or you can just put a little screw through there. And this is why I like these big fat heads, these flat heads. They grab a hold of that really well, and they're nice and smooth afterwards, don't catch on anything or drag on anything. So zip ties and a variety of them is very useful. Now normally this bag would be this size, which is I think 8 inch. 8 inches are the most popular ones. I bought these on accident, And they ended up being one of the best things I ever bought. They're small, they're narrow, they're easy to work with, and they're long enough to tie together things that you normally can't tie together. I don't know if they're 12 inches or 16 inches, but they definitely are extremely handy, and they work really well. So zip ties are something that you are going to want, and they are 12 inches long. So that said, I'm going to move zip ties out of the screen here, and we're going to talk about a tape measure. Obviously, this is one of those easy ones. Everybody knows about tape measure. Everybody needs tape measures for other things. But when you're measuring cables to run them out, and you've got a huge expense with tape measures, you will, unfortunately, you will end up having half a dozen of these. They have all kinds of different capabilities nowadays. I like this one where it stays out, and when I push on it, it pops in. I probably got 50 of these. My wife makes fun of me, why did you buy another tape measure? And I said, because I obviously don't have enough yet because I can't find one. And she's absolutely right. I can't find one doesn't necessarily mean I need to buy another one. But you need what you need when you need it. That's an easy tool, but something that's pretty much a necessity that you're going to need. Let's get into some of the more specialized tools. I use one of these fishing tapes. And I call them fishing tapes, and these basically allow me to run stuff through walls. I can then take the wire that is coming out the other end, like this wire here, and I will attach it with electrical tape, and then I can pull it through the wall. I can make this a nice smooth connection here, like that, and then I can pull that wire through back to where I started. This is nice and firm and allows me to get into that wall and to push it down through the insulation, to run down a wall into the thing, to run through walls in the RV, to run through things in the undertakes, underbelly, any place you need to go that you feel like you need a really, really long stick. That's what these fishing tapes are for. This one, I think, is 25 feet. It was probably 15 or 20 bucks. And knowing me, it was probably on sale when I bought it. And so I probably didn't even pay that for it. I probably saw it one day when I was walking by it. So fishing tape is something that's absolutely not necessary. But is it nice to have? It's definitely a nice to have when you want it and you want to get something done quickly, and things that you dread doing, this allows you to do them very quickly. Okay, more tools. I won't get into things like wrenches and pliers and that kind of stuff. Those are all kind of known. I will talk a little bit about this handy dandy device here. This is an infrared thermometer. It's pretty easy. You basically just point it at something and pull the trigger, and it tells you the temperature. So I point it at my forehead, and we probably are all familiar with something like this. During COVID, these were very popular. They have medical grade ones, but this one's not a medical grade one. This one is just basically to allow me to identify spots that are hot. These are extremely inexpensive. This goes between -4 degrees and 752 degrees, and I'll bet this costs no more than $15 at the absolute most. If you're going to have a problem in a solar system, 99% of the time it's going to get hot long before you ever have the problem. So you're going to want to look at, I'm going to move this over here where you can see me a little easier. You're going to want to look at one of these at the absolute minimum to detect problems. Now, it's only level 1. If you really want to get involved in determining problems with heat, then these two devices are truly thermal cameras. And with thermal cameras, and I probably could even demo this one for you, is this one you basically turn on. This one is for the Android device, and so I don't have it with me. I loaned it to someone and they're using it, but this is the box for it. I did a demo video on both of these. So if you're interested in how these work and what they were, you can go see those videos. But this one's pretty easy. I'm just going to go over here and open the app after I've got it turned on. I'm going to start the camera. It's going to ask me if I want to connect to it. The nice thing about this one is it connects through Wi-Fi. So this broadcasts a Wi-Fi network. I tell this to connect to that network and say join. It joins. And then I'm going to point this at my screen. Now normally you just clip this right here on your phone, but because I want you to be able to see the actual what I'm pointing at, you can see here I'm pointing at the, I'm going to turn this around and point it back at me. And as you can see, or can you see, let's see if maybe I can get a better view of that camera for you. No, maybe that one over there. There we go. And you can see that that's the temperature of me. And these are very, very easy to look at walls, to look at different devices, and to see the temperature of things and determine what is hot, what is not, what is going to cause you problems. So you can see here, this zoomed in directly on me shows the temperature of my face and everything in there. So this is truly live, interactive correction of problems. But is it necessity? No, it's not. Is it one of those devices that's really cool? Yes. Yes, and I'm very pleased with it. If you're doing a system that you're concerned about the temperature, I have the RV, and I have a DIY battery in addition to the inverter and all that mounted in a very close enclosed space. And if you're worried about that, then these are very important because they allow you to confirm that you don't really truly have any problems. They let you make sure that all of your connectors are the right temperature. Can you get through with this? I did for quite a while. And I was able to locate any of the real problems with this first. But this gives you comfort that you found them all. You can point this right at the system, the whole thing lights up, and you can zero right in on the problems. So it's not a necessity, but it's nice to have. Some other things that you probably want to get is these are commonly known. This is a generic version of what they call a kilowatt. And it's basically a name for calculating the use of a device. So you plug this into the wall, and then you plug whatever it is that you want to measure into this side here. And then this will calculate how much voltage and wattage and everything is being pulled from that plug. The nice thing is if you have, and I know this from our polls, that one of the most popular things that people want to do is run a refrigerator. And if you want to run a refrigerator during an outage, then what you would do is you would plug that refrigerator into this device and let it run for a day or two or three. And it will give you an idea of exactly the amount of power and the energy that you will need to store and what kind of maximum wattage pull, the influx, all of that. And you can use this to determine exactly the solar system that you're going to need to build to run that refrigerator. And you could do this for multiple devices and you could chain the answers together. But this is part of measuring really what you need to have a solar system. Now it only works on 110 stuff. They do sell, I did make a 220 version of this that goes into a 50 amp RV plug. I call it a 50 amp RV plug. Most people call them NEMA NEMA 1540 or 15 something, 1516. Basically, it has the same plug on both sides. So this is also used for charging of an RV. Now, if you're going to build one of these for charging of an RV, you need to make sure that the plugs that you use here and the plug that you use here can not only handle 50 amps, but can handle it consistently on an ongoing basis. If you look at this plug here, it says 50 amps. It's a NEMA 1450R. That's the plug name. The NEMA 1450R, and this one is the NEMA 1450 something or other. I don't know the name of the female one. And then these meters, and there's a video about this out there of how to build one of these. There's two CT clamps in here that basically allow you to measure all the voltage and all the watts and all the power that these things are done. It allows you to kind of keep track of it and use it the same way this would do, but this does it on a huge 50 amp 220 split phase wire, where this does it on a standard wall outlet. These are very, very good. All right, some other equipment that you might want to, this just adapts it into a generator so that you can run a 30 amp generator plug on it. One of the things I thought to mention to you guys, just so you're aware of it, it's another safety type thing here, is I want to talk a little bit about, on your equipment, looking at your wall plugs, especially extension cords. And I want you to notice the difference between these two extension cords. This extension cord has a nice little splitter here on the end, and a nice little wall plug here that lights up, and a nice little warning tag. Looks nice and official. Everything's great. And you plug it into a normal wall plug, and you keep plugging things in until your breaker pops. But let me warn you, most house outlets are 15 amps. This wall plug is 13 amps, which means before your breaker pops, this cord's going to melt and catch your house on fire. And this is why you see Christmas trees burning things down, or at least you used to. Now that they're using LEDs, it's not near as common. But this cable here is a 15 amp cable, and you can see it's 12 gauge 15 amp. Now, it is considerably different in size, and the reason being is that all three wires in here are larger in order to support that extra power. And this will support 15 amps on an ongoing space for the distance in the wire that it is. They sell 20 amp cords also, but they're much more expensive. Or if you go to 15 amps at 100 foot, you'll find out that those cables are even larger, because they'll go to, I think this is a 12 gauge wire, they'll go to a 10 gauge wire or something. But this is a huge safety item that you need to be concerned with, and part of your equipment should making sure that you aren't using these type of things for the wrong thing, especially when you're hooking up inverters and you're running stuff inside your vans or your caravan or your RV or stuff. This can burn your house down, burn your car down, burn your RV down, it can cause all kinds of danger. So please be aware of it. All right, specialty tools. Ones that you absolutely do not have to have, but man, are they cool. So let's talk about a bench charger. Now, if you're building DIY batteries and you're doing all this detailed DIY stuff, some of these will become necessary for you to be able to build those systems. So for example, this is what they call a bench, what do they call it? They call it a bench regulated DC power supply, or a bench power supply. It basically allows you to plug this in, dial up the voltage, the amperage you want to supply, plug these in here, and connect these little alligator clamps to a particular device. This one, just the other day, I had a razor that was one of those portable razors where you shave with, and I had lost the connection. But on the side of the box, on the side of the device, it said, hey, it's this many volts, this many amps. So I went into the bench charger here, to the bench power supply, and I set it to that, and I clipped these alligator clamps on it, and when you know that darn thing charged up, and it charged up because this is designed to provide exactly the power you need. This one is a necessity in solar, because what I used it for is testing that if batteries are fully charged, testing that they can take small amounts of amperage and voltage before I turn on something with a big solar system attached to it, making sure that it allows you to connect it and that everything is working the way it's supposed to, but to do it on a really small scale, up to, I think it does up to 5 amps. So this one will do, I think, 60 volts up to 5 amps. I think it's 60 volts output. Yeah, 0 to 60 volts and 5 amps. Now they sell one that does 120 volts or whatever, but I didn't get that one. I didn't really need it, and I had real use for it. A very cool device, and it allows you to do test things and locate problems. If you're not able to get things charging, this allows you to set up a test environment that really can make sure that they work. Another one of these devices, especially if you're doing DIY batteries, is a cell tester. Now you've probably seen the online people using these. Now this device here allows you to clamp onto a battery and hook up to your computer. Well, let me see if I can undo some of these cables here real quick. So this will hook up to your computer so you can track the results. This will hook up to the battery so that you can charge the individual cells. Now we're talking about lithium iron phosphate cells. We're not talking about batteries. We're talking about single cells. So each single cell is, 3.6 volts, between 2.5 and 3.6. And there's no coincidence that most of these little chargers for things like your phone uses 3.5 volts. They're basically just, a battery is just multiple cells put together. You take 3 of them or 4 of them, you put 3 of the 3 volt ones together, you end up with 12 volts. And you got a 12 volt system with 4 cells in it. Or you put 8 of them together, you get a 24 volt. If you put 16 of them together, you get a 48 volt system. So these are so precise that they use separate wires for the charging and for sensing the voltage. Because as the power is traveling through this to do the charging, the voltage wouldn't read correctly at the source of where that voltage is going. And so these are very, very precise. When they hook up to your software on your computer, they allow you to build graphs of how it charged, how it discharged, how much charge it took, how big the cells are. And I use this to test the 305 amp hour battery cells that I bought when I built my DIY battery. So this is one of those you absolutely do not have to have. I got caught up in the wave of building the battery and how it was going to go together and what I needed to do. And I ended up getting one of these because I thought it was absolutely necessary to test every cell and make sure it was. And as I got into it, I learned to, yes, in the old days it used to be absolutely necessary, but these days it's not absolutely necessary. The battery cells have gotten so good, and I got so lucky. The battery cells that I bought were premium quality, and I was able to, would have been able to get away without doing anything on them. But you don't know that until you test them. Or hook them up and realize now you got to go back and undo it and fix it all. All right, what else do we got here in the tool kits? Let's talk a little bit about some clampers. Getting back to wires and cables again. We talked about little cables, but we haven't talked about, this is probably one of the most important things. If you're going to be hooking up a solar system, you can buy large cables, and I don't mean cables the size of that little one we were playing with before. I'm talking about your large 1-aught battery cables or 4-aught battery cables. And what you're going to need is one of these hydraulic crimpers. This allows you, and I don't know if I have any lugs in here. I was hoping I did. No, I don't. But this allows you to put those lugs on and to crimp them down. And this tool runs about, I don't know, 35, 40, 50 bucks. It does between, 4 millimeter and 70 millimeter, which is basically, I think, 2-aught, all the way up to 12 or 8-aught. It's the measurements that are here don't match the American aught sizes, and because it's a Chinese-made device, most likely, it's just a hydraulic crimping tool. Although this one is quite popular and works really well, I'm very pleased with it. I've built all of my wires with it, and they're all held up very good. I haven't had any problems with them at all. But this is one of those tools that is an absolute necessity. If you're going to be building cables, do not use those cheap little connector ones that are out there. Buy yourself one of these and make sure that your cables are built right, and use the shrink wrap, and you can clamp the lugs on, get the wire cutters, cut the wires to the right distance, and you should be in good shape after that. All right. There are some other tools, knives. I would suggest in addition to a drill bit system that we talked about earlier, maybe a hole bit system. And this will allow you to drill bigger holes for routing cables and stuff like that. Like this big one here, I use to put the fans in my RV, so that this would eject the heat out of my cabin where the inverter is mounted. This particular one looks like it's made for putting door stops and doorknobs and stuff in, but it's perfect for what I use it for, putting all those different holes and things that are a little bit larger that you need it. You're going to need things, simple things, and I'm just going to go through these really quick because I don't think there's anything special about them. I like these little clip-on lights. They allow me to stick them to anything metal while I'm working on stuff. You're going to need a little level. You could probably also need a little bit bigger one. You're going to need some Allen wrenches. You're going to need some knife blades. I like these because they're $7 or $8, and you can just replace the blade. They're nice and sharp. Obviously, you're going to want a nice socket set with some different things to bolt down all the different pieces of sockets that you have. A tape measure, and I think for the most part, one more safety device that you absolutely positively need. And if you have any question about it, go watch video on flash arcs. Make sure that you have some good protective glasses. And my suggestion is don't buy one pair, buy multiple, because if you do anything electrical without these, you could lose your sight forever. One spark in your eye and you will lose your eye. And it's very terrible. And if you have an arc flash, you could be blind forever. So please make sure that you do buy some safety glasses. If you're drilling, if you're sawing, if you're especially if you're hooking up electrical things, those arc flashes can shoot sparks all over the place. Not only are they bright, can damage your eyes there, but those sparks hit your eyes and you'll lose it. And it's terrible. You'll notice, and I get this question a lot, that I have this wrapped in a special tape. This is tape that is put on here for the purpose of when I was building my DIY battery, that I could tighten down and hook this to the torque wrench, and I could tighten down each of the cells and make sure that they were correct. But if this handle accidentally hit another battery cell, that I didn't end up creating myself a socket wrench that turned bright red and burned me. It is very common. All of the tools that I used during that, even the little socket wrenches or little wrenches like this, I would tape them all up either with electrical tape or with this tape to prevent any type of connection or anything from going on there. All right, I'm going to run over to chat real quick, and I'm going to see if we have anyone that has any questions. And I am pretty much coming up to the end of all of the tools that I see sitting around me, and I'm sure there'll be a half a dozen that I forgot. There is an endoscope that I have sitting over here that this isn't necessarily solar related, but it is nice to have when you're running electrical wires for the solar system, and it allows you to see around corners and walls. You can take this wire here, and there's a camera in here, and it allows me, I use it to look into RV walls to see if I can get the wires and stuff I need through there. I use this in conjunction with the snakes that we looked at earlier to push them through so I could actually see what was behind the wall in there. It's great inside walls in a house and stuff like that. It's not really solar related, and it's absolutely not a necessity, but this is one of those really nice items that if you can afford it and you will use it on occasion, because there just is no substitute for being able to see around those corners, in those tight places, and under those corners and cracks and crevices. All right. This week I also want to make sure that here towards the end of this program that we say thank you to Supervillain Coffee, and they also have lots of comics and shirts and supervillain and superhero toys and all kinds of cool stuff in here. They've been around for, I don't know, going on 20 years now? Wow, has it been that long? 20 years of business. They added coffee when COVID came around, and it's been great success for them. And so we want to say thank you for letting us use your space. And if you're ever in Cocoa Beach and you see Ron John on the main strip, directly across the street is the coffee shop, Supervillain Coffee. I please ask you to come by and visit us and say hi to my wife and tell her that you saw me online and that you visit me for that. That way she's gracious enough to allow me to continue using her space even when I forget to put some things up. Oops. Okay. I think I've covered everything for the week, and no questions but good rundown on the stuff that is needed, and that is good to hear. I want to see if I can, let's see if I can do this. Didn't get to do it a lot this week, so I want to, the one I do have, I want to, there we go. Add that. There we go. No questions, but good rundown for the stuff that's needed this week. I hope that there is if there's any questions that you feel free to send them after the thing. If you're watching this on a recording, just post them down below. I am going to work on a list of all of these items and provide you links. Most of these links are affiliates and they help me out quite a bit. So if you're able to use one of them when you purchase things off of Amazon, you can use the link and then buy other things too. That helps me also. I do get credit for those, and I really appreciate all of you and everything that you've done. I don't know if I have anything else. I want to double check. Sorry, it takes me a little bit to get back and forth between the screens here. And I don't see any more questions. And I see we still have 5 people online, so 6 people online, 8 people online, however many. Either way. Thanks everybody for coming. Great live stream this week. And we will see you next week. Well, we don't know what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be here. So hopefully, if you've lived through this long, you will, if I've earned it, I would like you to like the video. And if you like this content, subscribe. But if I haven't, or you feel that I haven't done enough for you yet, go watch another video. Maybe I'll earn your trust then. Thank you very much, and have a great week, everybody.